Hi, this is Adam Koo and welcome to the Patterns of Excellence audio CD program. Once again, thank you for investing your time to listen to this audio program. If you've already completed the 8-day Patterns of Excellence training, this program will serve as a way for you to continually review the powerful and life-changing concepts you've already experienced. But more importantly, to help you to continually put into practice what you've learned into your daily life. This whole CD program has been divided into 10 audio CDs covering the most relevant of topics. In this CD, we'll focus on the ultimate success formula. Why do people succeed? What formula do they use? And how can you duplicate their formula? We'll then move into CD 2 where we talk about the power of states, how states determine the actions we take and the results we produce. We'll then talk about how we use the power of physiology to continually manage our states on an ongoing basis. In CD 3, we'll talk about the power of submodalities, on how you can begin to program and reprogram the nervous system in your brain using the keyboard to your brain, submodalities, to increase or disintensify any experience you have in your life. In CD 4, we'll focus on the power of beliefs, one of the most powerful filters that filter your internal representation on how you perceive the world and determine what you will or will not do. Next, we'll talk about anchoring, on how you can firewall states at will. How do you put yourself in a motivated state? How do you collapse negative states like depression or procrastination? In CD 5, we'll focus once again on the most important question. What do you want in your life? We'll talk about designing your destiny, about writing out your life plan, and we'll then go into this thing called reframing, on how you can change perceptions in yourself and in other people you care about. In CD 6, we'll focus on values. As you know, values are the driving force in our life. Why do people behave the way we behave? What are our hot buttons that drive us every single day? Once we clarify our values and put them in line with our goals, we are shifted into high gear in everything we do. In CD 7, we'll focus on language patterns of influence. The first being how do you build rapport with people, the magic of rapport. In CD 8, we'll talk about the Milton model. How do you shift people's perceptions and states using language? In CD 9, we'll talk about the meta model on how to get precision, how do you get specific, how do you clarify information. And finally on CD 10, we'll talk about strategies. How do you find, model, duplicate and install someone's strategy? So if you're ready, we go into the program now. If you have happened to not attend the Patterns of Excellence training program yet, then this audio program will serve as a very good introduction to the world of NLP and the strategies you can use to create personal transformations in your life as well as the lives of other people. And this program has been created in such a way that you will not just listen to it passively. So please don't put it in a CD player in the car and just listen to it in the background. It is actually packed with activities and assignments that I would strongly urge you to participate in 150%. So before beginning to listen to any of the CDs, make sure you put aside the relevant time. Make sure you clear your room of any distractions, and make sure that you have with you a set of writing materials. For those of you who have gone through the training program, do bring along your training manual, as you can refer to it from time to time. And before we begin, I want to say once again, it's been a privilege for myself and Stuart Tan, my partnering trainer, to have this opportunity to share with you the most powerful and relevant tools of NLP that have enabled us to create excellence in our own lives and the lives of many people who have gone through this training. You see, we share one thing in common, that we came from a past when we were underperforming in virtually every area of our lives. As students, we were both below average in terms of academic ability. Being shy and having very little confidence, we were never very good at getting along with people, let alone being able to lead anyone or create anything. It was at this point of time that we were both exposed to the power of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. NLP is basically a science of how you take charge of your life and how to use the language of your mind to program your nervous system to consistently produce a fantastic result. For example, if every morning someone can wake up at 6 a.m. and feel completely motivated, it's because they've produced that specific result. If we can program our nervous system in the same way, we can produce the same result through language. And it's the language of the mind, not just language of the words. And using this technology, we began to take charge of virtually every area of our lives and began to produce exceptional results within a very short period of time. And that's the magic of what this technology is all about. And it's because of this experience that we derive our passion to help everyone and around us tap into the limitless potential of their own human spirit. More specifically for me, from the time I could remember, I was a struggling below average student. But not only could I not study, but I was someone who was extremely antisocial. I didn't have many friends. In fact, I couldn't get along with people and started fighting at a very young age. As a result, when I was 9 years old, I got kicked out of school. For almost half a year, I had no school to go to, and my mom had to drag me and find another school for me. But eventually, when I got into a new primary school at the age of 10, I still continued to not learn my lesson. I would continue to fight, I would continue to play, I would be really shy, I would mix around with people, and my studies deteriorated to such an extent that I didn't do very well for my primary school leaving examinations. And I was rejected from every single school which I had opted for my secondary school. At the end of the day, I was posted to a school which was the bottom 3 schools of the whole of Singapore. It was called Ping Yi Secondary School. Unfortunately, when I first went in there, I still continued with my old habits. Now, looking back, I wondered why was I like that? So the first reason was I had a lot of limiting beliefs about myself. I had extremely low self-esteem. I used to believe that no matter how hard I studied, I'll never be able to do well, so why even try? And decided to do something I was good at, which was bullying people at the time. The second reason was I had a lot of limiting habits. I used to be very sleepy in class, I used to be easily distracted, and I used to be having a lot of behavioral problems. So as a result, in secondary 1 at the age of 13 years old, things got worse and worse, and I found myself deteriorating extremely in all the areas of my life. I could not even get to the scouts. I was kicked out of the scouts for not paying attention. And it was the lowest point of my life at this time that I learned first about NLP through a motivational program I was sent to. And neuro-linguistic programming at that time to me was something new, but I found it extremely fascinating. And there were 3 foundational principles I learned that began to change my life around. The first thing I learned in NLP was the power of my beliefs. I learned that it was really our beliefs that determine what we will or will not do in our lives. And again, the trouble with me at that time was I used to believe I was slow. I used to believe I was stupid. I used to believe that no one would like me, and that prevented me from really expanding my potential. Then a teacher came up to me and he told me this. He said, Adam, it's nothing but a belief, and before your life changes, you got to change your belief. And he gave me the first belief, which I think is the fundamental belief that everyone needs to begin to create exceptional results in their life. And the belief is this: all of us have got the same neurology. In other words, all of us have got basically the same kind of brain power, the same hardware. If it's possible for someone, it's possible for you. So my teacher came up to me at that time and said this. He said, Adam, if someone can be in a gifted program, and so can you. Now, because I was pretty young and pretty naive, I bought the idea, I actually believed him. But you know as well as I do, by changing beliefs by itself, it's not going to work. You can't sit down there and believe that, I'm smart, I'm rich, and you become rich. That doesn't happen. But what beliefs do is beliefs open up the possibility for you to find a way to get it done. So the second foundational principle I learned in the area of NLP that began to shift my life was in the area of strategies. I began to learn when we're no good in something, it's not because we don't have the capability. It's not that we don't have the ability. It's that we don't have the strategy. And so I learned a technique called modeling. Modeling is basically a technique where you look at people who are exhibiting patterns of excellence in a certain area. For example, someone may be very good in mathematics, someone may be very creative, someone may be extremely dynamic, someone may be extremely good on stage giving a presentation. Now, through this process called modeling, you can actually model their strategy. If you model someone's strategy and you use the same strategy, you're going to produce the same result. So for me at that time, excellence meant excellence in the area of studying, scoring A's. And so I began to break it down into memory, for example, being able to read fast, being able to comprehend, being able to do maths, being able to think logically, being able to sit for exams. And I use this technique of modeling to go out there and model the students who are the best in each of these things. I modeled my sister in the area of mathematics. I modeled a friend in the area of memory. And the third principle was this: you can have all the beliefs you want, you can know all the strategies to succeed, but if you don't get yourself to take consistent action, to get yourself to move your butt, nothing's going to happen. And I learned at that time that what really drives our actions is not logic, but truly our emotions. When we feel motivated, when we feel enthusiastic, we take action. But when we feel lazy and procrastination, we don't take action. So the third thing what I learned was how to get myself into the right state to consistently take action. So the minute I learned these 3 principles, I went back to my school, and for the first time in my life, I started to design a destiny for myself. I set 4 major goals at that time. My first goal was to top my school within 1 year. My second goal was to get into the number 1 junior college at the time, which was called Victoria Junior College. And my third goal was to get into the National University of Singapore, which everyone, including my parents, never thought I could get in. And my fourth goal was to make my first million by 26. Now, at that point of time, I could imagine that it seemed like a pretty ridiculous set of goals, especially since I was where I was. But because I utilized the 3 principles, I began to achieve every single one of them slowly. I taught my school within 3 years, not 1 year, by the way. I went on to Victoria Junior College, I went to NUS, the National University of Singapore, and got myself into the gifted program, the top 1% of students within the first year. And within the age of 26, I made my first million, being in 2 businesses, event management and training. And that's what actually drove me to write my first book, I'm Gifted, So Are You. telling people that, hey, if I'm so-called gifted, so is everyone else. It's only a question of belief, strategy, and action. In fact, you may want to write down the first guiding principle of NLP, or the first presupposition. All of us have basically the same neurology. If it's possible for others, it's possible for me. In other words, all of us have basically the same hardware, the same number of neurons in our brain. If someone is extremely good in being creative, so can you. You can generate the same ideas. The only thing is you have to find out how do they mentally do it. What's their strategy? If someone is extremely motivated every single day to accomplish his goals, is focused in doing what he wants, can you produce the same result? Of course you can. You just have to run your brain the same way and you produce the same result. See, all of us were given a gift, a power that we can use to accomplish almost any result we want in our life. And this power I'm talking about is the power of your brain and your body working together. Run it effectively and you can accomplish almost any result you want in your life. But run it ineffectively and a lot of your dreams just remain dreams. They never become the results they could be. You see, neurologically, all of us have about 1 million neurons in our nervous system. Besides people who are born with severe brain damage or physical disabilities in their brain, all of us have got basically the same hardware. So if someone is able to do something, in their brains, like get themselves motivated or be able to think in a certain way, it's because of not the number of neurons they have, but rather the type of neural connections they've created in their brains. See, 20 weeks after conception, our neurons in our brain start to make connections, and these connections are called neural connections. And these neural connections in our brain are like the wiring in a robot's head. They determine the kind of thought patterns, the kind of behaviors we have. In other words, your neural connections, the more connections you have in a particular area, the more intelligent you are in a particular area. For example, if you're good in maths, it's because you have a lot of neural connections that allow you to conceptualize, understand, and develop mathematical theories, for example. But you may not be very good in art because you don't have enough neural connection or what we call neural network patterns in your brain to allow you to draw or to think in a very creative way artistically. Now we can continue to increase the number of neural connections we have in a particular area or activity by stimulating our brain. Now this could take years of trial and error. For example, if you were to sit down right now, and you may not be particularly talented in music, but have to sit down and to master music and play, for example, an instrument, it may take you some time to be able to get the feel of it, to get the rhythm of it, and create the necessary thought patterns and neural connections to produce a specific result. But through the process of modeling, we can find someone who's extremely good in something, someone who can really play the piano very well, someone who is very creative, someone who's extremely motivated in the morning. Now if we can learn how does he mentally wire his brain to do that, and we can begin to elicit this person's strategy and install it within ourselves, guess what? We will cut short those years of trial and error and produce the same result. Now, NLP first came about when these two gentlemen, Dr. Richard Bandler and Dr. John Grinder, they decided to go out there and model people who are excellent in creating change in others. They wanted to model people who were linguistic experts, through speaking, through their words and through their therapies could change people. And through all their surveys and all their research, they found three people. One was this person called Milton Erickson, who was a clinical therapist, who had the ability to create changes in people where many other therapies fail. The other person they went forth and modeled was this person called Virginia Satir, who was the mother of family therapy. And you know, when couples would go through all kinds of therapies and nothing would cure them, they would go to Satir, and through her use of language, and through the way she talks to people, and the way she processes information, and changes their state, they'll create the kind of results that other therapies cannot create. They also went forth and modeled this person called Fritz Perls, who was a Gestalt therapist. Now take note that these three masters of communication, Fritz Perls, Milton Erickson, and Virginia Satir, all three of them were masters of change, but it took many years to be able to hone their craft. And many of them didn't even know how they did it consciously, they were just good at it. So Richard Bandler and John Grinder asked this question. They said, if we went and modeled these people's linguistic patterns, the way in which they spoke, the way in which they structured language, the way in which they thought, can we come with a blueprint of language patterns that if we, without the many years of therapeutic skills and training, can we produce the same results they can? So through modeling these three people, they created the first set of NLP on the Milton model and the Meta model. And when they taught this to people who didn't necessarily have 20-30 years of therapeutic experience, guess what? They were able to produce almost similar results as these three people could. From there, NLP then found its way into different forms of applications. For example, in sales, if you found someone who's extremely good salesperson, who took maybe years of trial and error to perfect his sales strategy, the way he speaks, the way he looks, the way he presents his product, and you were to model that person's patterns of excellence, and you were to install within yourself, and you were to run that same program in your brain, guess what? You produce that same result. Similarly, if you found someone who may have been a fantastic teacher, someone who's able to build rapport with students so well, someone who's able to get through to them, change their mindset, and motivate these students to study, could you go to a teacher like that who had 20 years of experience, model her strategy, and produce the same result? And that's how myself and Stuart, the other trainer in this program, were able to create massive results in a short period of time. I went forth and began to model students who are extremely good in the different areas of study, in mathematics and science and humanities, and I began to produce the same results in a short period of time. I then went to model people who are extremely good in speaking, who are extremely good in motivating people, and began to model their strategy. I also went to look for people who had made massive amounts of money, became millionaires at a very young age, and I did not know all of them personally, but for many of them, I learned about them through reading their books and watching their seminars, listening to their tapes, and I began to again model the way in which they thought, the way in which they handled people, the way in which they ran businesses. And through using these same techniques which I modeled after them, I began to create similar results. And Stuart did exactly the same thing in different areas of his life. I mean, he was someone I've known for the last 15, 16, 17 years. And as someone who was a young kid, he was not someone who had a particularly natural speaking ability in terms of getting along with people. In fact, he was someone who was extremely shy, he kept to himself, and didn't really get along with people that well. In fact, when he was asked to run for prefect of his school, he failed his probation because he couldn't get people to listen to him. But what he did was he began to use the power of NLP at that time to model people who are excellent speakers, people who are able to gain rapport with other people really well, people who are able to move other people through their language. And through again modeling these people and using the same strategies, and again through a lot of action, he began to produce fantastic results in his area of speaking, in the Toastmasters. From a person with literally no speaking experience, with very little talent to begin with, he went out and became a regional champion in public speaking. So you can do this with anything. You can do the same thing in your life. Is there an area of your life which you think you're no good in? Could you find someone who's extremely good in the area and could you model that person? So on the CD and strategies, Stuart's going to talk a lot more about how do we begin to actually model someone's micro strategies, the way in which someone thinks and the way in which someone behaves and the way in which someone produces results. But as of now, let's focus on what we call a macro strategy. In other words, let's find out, is there a strategy to success that we can model in people who are extremely successful? Now, obviously, the strategy to be a successful teacher, rather than being a successful businessman, rather than being a successful salesman, it will be all different strategies at a micro level. But if you think about it, everyone who succeeds in their life and produces exceptional results in whatever area they're in, they exhibit certain general patterns. In other words, they've got a general formula for success. And I call this the ultimate success formula. So what's the ultimate success formula? If you look at people who succeed, the first thing they do is this. They get very clear on the outcome. They set extremely clear goals, and that's the first step. In fact, in the year 1952, at Yale University, researchers decided to do a survey on the graduating batch of students. And they asked all these students, how many of you have got your goals written down? In other words, how many of you have actually designed your life in the next 5, 10 to 15 years? And out of all these students from Yale, which is supposed to be an Ivy League school in the United States, only 3% of the students had their goals written down. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. However, the 97% of students had literally no goals. They had no idea what they're going to do 5 years, 10 years down the road. They didn't know how much they were going to earn, and they didn't know what lie ahead. In fact, the 3% of students had the attitude that we design our life and we begin to manifest it in our reality. The 97% of the people had this attitude, whatever will be, will be. Let's just make a living and we'll see how. And 20 years later, when they did a follow-up research on this whole bunch of students who had survived over 20 years, they found that the 3% of the students who had set their goals, their combined income was 3 times greater than the combined income of the 97% of the people combined. Now, this is the process or the power of setting goals or getting clear about what you want. It's a common trait you see in anyone who succeeds in their life. You look at a Tiger Woods, for example. At the age of 8 years old, he decided to be the number 1 golfer in the world. You look at a Steven Spielberg, who at the age of 12 years old got again really very clear about being in a movie business. Everyone you know who succeeds at a significant level has done it because they have begun to decide on what it is they want. So that's the first thing you got to do.